Hello, so in the next 3 minutes, I'm happy to share a little bit about my project here in iCRAG, which is an example of what interdisciplinarity is in the geosciences, combining geochemistry and paleontology in general to together give a good glimpse about Earth's climate history. Yeah, so I'm mostly a paleontologist who likes plants. Pretty much everyone here likes plants. Those who don't like plants are mostly other geologists because they cover all the outcrops they are trying to study. Anyhow, I like plants because in the fossil record they preserve a rather abundant amount of fossils in terms of their plant material, and they can give us a glimpse of the communities that came and went through time. And I focus about times of troubles for them, when things went from good to not so good. And in my case, I'm trying to explore the end Permian mass extinction about 252 million years ago, which we already know was the large mass extinction in the last 500 million years. It had a big impact in the marine species, not so much in plants. That's what I'm trying here to determine, at least for plants that are located in the southern hemisphere, such as these ones here that were collected in Australia. Why Australia? Because they have one, if not the only place in Earth that has a rather complete succession throughout the many millions of years after the mass extinction. Not just plants, I also studied sediments. In this case, the microfossils that we can see in them after preparation. These are just some examples. Why? They give us a rough date, and they also tell us more or less the types of populations that were regionally located there. But here is where geochemistry comes along to aid and augment the fossil data. In this case, stable carbon isotopes, they give us an history of times where climatic crises were occurring by seeing at the ratio of stable carbon isotopes, and also to help pinpoint in time to a very high rate of precision the samples we are studying with, because the samples here have a rather global signal. And also, the elemental data from the sediments themselves, because they can show us if a certain sediment is more or less enriched in certain clays, which give us even more evidence of the paleoenvironmental proxies that were at the time present. And what I'm showing here is just an example of one of the figures of my first chapter, really. It really just shows that after the end of mass extinction, we have a very quick recovery of plants that came back in roughly a few hundred million years after the extensive degassing of high CO2 levels and high temperature. But there's also the fact that these plants did not persist that long after. There was a second warming event that just caused devastation to these plant communities. That is until certain cooling allowed some others to return and establish in the ecosystem. Geochemistry here was helpful in determining to a very high resolution the dating, which would not be possible if not for that. And if I had some takeaway points to give here today, would be that geochemistry, it helped us get climatic and carbon cycle changes across time. The plants' microfossils themselves tell us how life on land responded to these climatic changes. That the term recovery can be misleading because forests can recover eventually, but extinction is forever. What we see here are very different from what came before. And if you want to hear more about it, I have a poster outside. And in the beginning of March, there'll also be a press release about this work that I'm submitting. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going more a little bit younger. So what it's about is about the rocky coastline erosion in Galway. Also, my whole project is a little bit more spread over islands along the western coastline, but let's just stay here in Zero Strand near Galway. It's a coastal drumlin, so we have like glacial deposits in the back forming a nice cliff. We have a shore platform fronting it. And now there is the question, okay, how can we measure the coastal erosion there? Come on. So if you just imagine that we have a platform here, then an ice cliff. So one idea could be, okay, after the big storm we had 2 weeks ago, or for example, after one winter, just how much was the erosion within the short time scale. So we can go out with a drone, measuring the cliff face between a few months and see, okay, we have a lot changed maybe in front of here or back here, and then we can see, okay, based on the volume that's changed, in this case it would be around 8 centimeters a year, so we could have 8 centimeters of erosion just from seasonal effects by storms, so just in a short time scale. But since we also have old maps from the 1842, we have old photographs from the 1990s or so, we can also measure the cliff top and can see, okay, what is not the face, but the cliff line, how did that change over a longer time scale? And it seems to be different. So it seems to be that then we have like 14 centimeters a year. And that's the question, okay, is it what is behind it? Is it climate change? Is it human influences? For example, this little seawall here, maybe that gives an influence. So what is now the big, an overall average erosion rate over, let's say, millions of years? And for that, what we did sampling rocks and measuring the amount of beryllium that's produced by cosmic radiation in there. And like this, we can then calculate like a long-term cliff retreat rate over a million scales. And here we have, again, something about 8 centimeters a year. This just we got a few weeks ago. And so the question would be, okay, why is that one here so big? And what we can here clearly see, it's not only one erosion rate, it's more like, it depends on the time scale we have. It depends also on the rock type we have. It is here like this, but if we go, for example, on a harder rock type, it might be very different. So there's much more, there's much more work to do, and that's what we're going to do for next 1 year left. Also, then also for getting people around islands to see, okay, when you're living near the coastline, what could be affected or what could be influences you're living there. Yeah, thank you. And if you have more questions about that, there's also a poster outside. And, yeah.
Okay, my name is Farimah and I'm a PhD student from University of Galway. I'm presenting about the effect of surcharging on secondary settlement of peat. Just a quick introduction is that about 17% of land area in Ireland covers with peat, so it's inevitable that this kind of soils will be encountered in any future road scheme. As much as peat soil is good for environment, they are quite challenging for construction because of their high compressibility and low shear strength. So the common practice now in facing these kind of soils is just to excavate and replace them, but it's not environmentally. And it's also not practical for deep peat layers. So what is the solution? Surcharging can be a solution. Surcharging is a cost-effective ground improvement method involving leaving soil in place by applying a maximum surcharge, which is higher than your final road level, for a short period of time. So this causes your soil be over-consolidated. The hypothesis is that the rate of settlement after removing that temporary surcharge will be reduces. So it's highly proven in mineral soils, but rarely used in highly organic soil, and it's not permitted by TII to use this method in highly organic soils in Ireland, like peat soil. So our project is about redeveloping about 1.5 kilometers of a national road, N56 road in Glenties in County Donegal, using this surcharging method, and just selecting different locations for long-term monitoring in case of monitoring the vertical deformation, lateral deformation, which just can do using in kilometers at two sides of the road in different locations, and also just monitoring pore water pressure across that 1.5 kilometers of the road. So we are going to just add some data about Irish peat data, about that variety range of peat thickness across that road. We have about 1 to about 7 meters peat thickness across that 1.5 kilometers of road. You can see some initial data about it related to only one location. You can see after removing the surcharge, the dissipation of the pore water pressure almost dissipated. And the rate of settlement after removing surcharge reduces. There is some theories that saying that the rate of settlement after removing the surcharge has a function of the amount of surcharge at the place. So it depends on the amount of surcharge, the duration of keeping that maximum surcharge, the amount of peat thickness, the properties, the characteristics of your peat thickness. So we are going to add some data based on these different locations at this site about the Irish peat. So we did analyze the field data. These field data is just recording and being updated during the next years. So we are hoping to add some more data. And we are doing laboratory tests to do some long-term consolidation tests to just simulate some laboratory data based on the actual field data. So with just having the field and lab data, we have quite good data for doing some numerical tests, some numerical modeling using Plaxis to just study in different scenarios in case of different amount of surcharge. What happened if we have different peat thickness? What happened if we can just keep our maximum surcharge for a shorter or longer period of time in place, or any other variety in case of peat characteristics or some other data. Yeah, thanks. That's all.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rioko Moscardini. With these lights and this stage mic, I feel like Britney Spears, so I'll answer both names for this talk. But today I'm going to be talking to you about reservoir quality and geostorage potential in the Triassic Shearwood Sandstone Group. Okay, so what actually is reservoir quality? So basically, it's the ability of a rock formation to store and transmit fluids. So two really key parameters when we're investigating reservoir quality is looking at the porosity and the permeability. So on the screen here, I've just made a schematic showing a sandstone thin section and some things that can happen depositionally and diagenetically that can either enhance or reduce the porosity and permeability. So I'll let you just look at them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of them include varying grain size, the type of grain, the cements that can grow at either early, late, or middle diagenesis. So far in my project, I've been looking at how the reservoir quality changes vertically, specifically looking at the depositional factors colored in green. And I've been looking in Northern Ireland to start with. So if you sort of look at the bigger picture of my project, I've been looking just around here, so in a borehole called Geel Root, and I've been looking from the macro to the micro scale. So I've been looking at the outcrops, and then I've been looking at the core, looking at the grain sizes, the sedimentary structures, the amount of interclass, how much the lithology is changing. Then I've been taking it down to the thin section scale and looking at the mineralogical composition. Why should any of you guys care about what I'm studying? Why is this important? I think even in this morning's talks, I think it was really prevalent how much importance and interest there is in geostorage applications. Irrespective of whatever geostorage potential or solution you're looking into, whether that's carbon capture storage, whether that's hydrogen storage, geothermal energy, compressed air storage, you need to be looking at the reservoir quality of your target if you want something that's going to be economically viable. Specifically, looking at the Shearwood Sandstone Group, this map is basically showing the present-day sedimentary basins containing the Triassic Shearwood Sandstone Group. So you can see that it's quite prevalent across UK, Northern Ireland, and in the Irish Sea too. What we're seeing here is in the past, it's been a very well-explored target for hydrocarbon exploration. So we know from this that the Shearwood Sandstone group is pretty heterogeneous, and that basically means that the properties aren't really uniform. And you can see that just looking at these 3 samples of core, like this is all the Shearwood Sandstone group, but I think you can agree with me just looking at it that the properties are changing, and therefore this is going to impact the porosity and permeability, and therefore the reservoir quality. So I'm going to leave it at that because I'm short on my time, but yeah, if you want to talk to me, I'll be at poster 52. Thank you.
All right, so fingerprinting Irish fool's gold. And can it help track down mineral deposits? So firstly, fool's gold gets its name from its visual similarity to gold. But actually, it's just an iron sulfide. And it's called pyrite. And pyrite is the most abundant sulfide mineral in the Irish zinc and lead deposits. So now pyrite hosts like a whole range of trace elements in it. And that includes gold, as well as silver, arsenic, cobalt, nickel, and many others. It hosts trace elements either in its crystal lattice, as nanoparticles, and as microinclusions. And the incorporation of these trace elements into pyrite is what makes it really interesting. It's influenced by things like temperature, redox conditions, the host rock, and the hydrothermal fluid composition. So in other words, pyrite itself can record the evolution of the whole hydrothermal system. So that brings us to the question, can trace elements in pyrite be used to fingerprint deposits? So can it tell us, tell the difference between different kinds of deposits? So to answer that question, I took 52 different samples of pyrite across the Midlands in Ireland. I worked in 2 study areas. Firstly, in the Rathdowney Trend, which has some very famous zinc and lead deposits like Lachine and Galmoy, and a very well-known prospect, Rappler. And I also looked at the Limerick Basin, where there's also some well-known deposits, but also lots of prospects at the moment. And once I got all these samples, I used a technique called laser ablation, ICP-MS, to do spot analysis across all the different kinds of generations of pyrite. So very importantly, the first step was to define what kind of pyrite I had, and then I analyzed these different generations to see what trace elements they had inside them, as well as doing these very cool laser ablation maps across pyrite grains. And that just shows the complexity of how these trace elements are hosted in pyrite. Also, similarly, I use another in situ technique called SIMS, secondary ion mass spectrometry, where you also get specific sulfur isotope data from all of these different generations of pyrite. And once I accumulated all of this data, I've put it together with some different statistical techniques and using a little bit of machine learning to try to figure out what it all means. And the answer is yes. Pyrite can geochemically fingerprint Irish ore deposits. So these are principal component biplot analyses. And in the very first one from the Rathdowney Trend, you can see, for example, that Rappler has a very different geochemical signature to Lachine and Galmoy. And the same in the Limerick Basin. For example, Stone Park, which is a well-known deposit, has a very different geochemical signature to the newly discovered Ballywire prospect. Stone Park, for example, has got trace elements that are more redox sensitive in it. So yeah, pyrite has a significant potential to aid in mineral exploration. And if you want to know more, and if you're interested in how this technique was used in different kinds of deposits, come see my poster where I did similar work in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. Thank you.
Right, hello. My name is Adam Mann, and my project is looking at the engineering behaviour of the Irish sea till in the Rosslare area in County Wexford. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Irish sea till, it's a glacial till deposit that's found along much of the eastern and southern coasts of Ireland. And it's notably different from the usual stony tills, the boulder clays here, in that it's predominantly fine-grained. It's mostly clay and silt with little to no gravel particles. And while the material is fairly well understood from a geological point of view, there's been very little research published to date concerning its engineering properties. So this is what our project aims to rectify, as the material is known to cause issues during construction due to its tendency to swell once it's been disturbed. And this then also causes issues for coastal infrastructure, where Irish seat till is beneath the infrastructure. So that brings us to our site at Rosslare. So you can see from the map here and the photograph that our site borders the Rosslare train line, and it's just up the road from Rosslare Europort as well. So it's a very busy area, and there's a lot of planned developments in the works and ongoing as well. So new roads, coastal infrastructure, coastal erosion projects, greenways, and a big expansion to the port as well. So it's very important that we understand the soil from an engineering point of view so that we can provide input on the design of these projects and avoid running into issues during construction. And the results from this project then will be applicable to all areas in Ireland where Irish seat till exists, not just in Rosslare. And we also plan to link the results with other similar materials globally. So we're still in the early stages of the project, but we have completed a number of in situ ground investigations to date. So we started with some geophysics surveys, some ERT, EM, MASW, and seismic refraction to image the subsurface. And we did find that the Irish seat till stands out really clearly on the ERT sections due to its low resistivity. So that's it there in the red. This then guided us in picking locations for our intrusive investigations. So we had some CPT testing and rotary drilling as well using the GeoBoreS method, and that gave us plenty of samples to work with. At the moment then, we're currently working on extensive lab testing on these samples. And the results then of this, when combined with the rest of the data, will allow us to determine the relevant geotechnical properties of the Irish seat till. So thank you for listening, and you can check out my poster outside.
Hello, my name is Rosie, and I am a researcher here at iCRAG, and I'm shared with the School of Education here in UCD. And I work on the vector project that Gertrude talked about earlier in the social science work package. As part of our research, we set up a community of practice with teachers, educational researchers, and scientists here from iCRAG. And this group explored the potential of education and the hope that it offers in the face of our climate emergency. And there's obviously a lot more to this process and the project in general, and I suggest you check out our website, Next Act, for details on that, or come talk to me afterwards. I'm poster 59 if you want to check me out. But the long and short of it is that we looked at 4 educational initiatives, or the community did, and 3 of those were successfully piloted, 2 in schools in the local area, and 1 here in UCD. And they've gone on to be quite successful in that they're in their 2nd year of running, with sustained by those community members and the connections that they made during our community get-togethers. And we've recruited more schools to come in and try these initiatives themselves. So we consider that really successful. But that success is not really down to us, it's down to our community and how they work and who made it up. And for this to be as successful as it was, it took some rethinking on our part as researchers. When you look at social science, you learn really quickly that we are not the experts. When you're talking about questions that affect society in general, the people who have lived experience, who are affected by these issues on a daily basis, have a much more nuanced understanding of how things work, much more so than any assumptions we can make as researchers. So it was really important for us that those people were part of our community. And also, it's been mentioned a few times today that sometimes these kind of projects get tacked on to the end, or they're an afterthought. And even with the best will in the world, sometimes our research is done by the time we think about asking people what they think. We have an initiative or we have a project, and we want to engage the public, but it's generally like engage with it or validate it and give us some feedback on it. So what we tried to do was to have our community part of the process from the get-go. From the conversations about what we would do, they co-designed the process and the methods. They were involved in the piloting of these programs. And they were the reason it was successful. You know? I didn't have to go out and try to convince people that they should be excited and they should engage with this. They were excited and they did engage because it was their project. It wasn't mine. And they worked so hard to get to the point that we had 3 successful pilots out of this single project. And I think going forward, if we want the biggest impact from the research we're going to do, that having people from our communities involved in what we do increases the impact our research can have massively. So if anybody is kind of interested in talking about those ideas, or is interested in drinking tea in general, come chat to me, and I would be delighted to talk to you. But thank you very much.